Hey, welcome to Socialism for All. Today's date is September 6, 2023, and we are recording S4A Livestream number 105 over at twitch.tv/socialisms4a, where I'm joined in the chat with a little over 24 chatters, commenters, viewers, and we were just having a little bit of a chat prior to recording here. But let's see, I prepped a fair amount for this stream. And I don't think I'm going to get to everything that I was putting together in this stream. We're probably going to have to do 2, maybe 3 streams for this. Hopefully 2. But in this stream, we are going to cover what's new on the channel, as we always do. A little bit of a COVID update, just as far as we are in a COVID surge, and I just want to look at the wastewater data quickly on that. I am gathering up articles from the last few months for a longer COVID update in terms of some of the, just information about what SARS-2 does to your body. Obviously, a lot of people know that it is dangerous as far as its respiratory effects. It can cause fluid to build up in the lungs, kills a lot of people that way. But what you may not know, but should by now, and so I'm going to tell you, is that the SARS-2 virus can infect basically any tissue in the body that contains a type of receptor called ACE2. And here's the thing, most of your major organs have lots of ACE2 receptors. This includes your brain, heart, lungs, liver, kidneys. It can also infect and kill T cells, which are a major component of your immune system, which helps to go after and reduce infectious pathogens that get into your body, and also cancer cells before the cancer can turn into a big problem. So having depleted or worn out T cells is a really big problem, and SARS-2 can cause that. So for lots of reasons, and also this gets worse with each reinfection, each subsequent reinfection ups your odds of developing some kind of health problem, whether it's hospitalization and death, because again, the lungs do get infected and affected directly. But then there's all this other secondary damage. Your pancreas can be infected. SARS-2 is known to make both diabetes type 1 and type 2 more likely, especially in children. So it can cause all of this extensive organ damage, and the more reinfections you have, the greater the odds of that. So it's really not something that you want to play around with. We're in a surge again. We'll look at that in a minute. You do want to mask up. Otherwise, the 2 kind of main things I wanted to get into is I believe, this is number 1, we are on the precipice of another major 2008 type crash. In fact, I would hold as my thesis that the underlying issues of 2008 really never got resolved. Instead, they did quantitative easing to buy time, but we're still basically in this extended bubble situation. A new bubble popped up, and it's going to crash, and there's a lot of signs that we're in sort of like a 2006, 2007 type situation now, and it's just sort of a question of when exactly all of the different pieces and ramifications are going to shake out and fall into place, but it's going to be pretty ugly. So we'll have a discussion of that, basically, what's happened since 2008 and why it's basically still lingering around now, looking at the housing market and other examples of this playing out. They've been talking about, there's all kinds of propaganda in the economics websites and news sites and things, but you got to kind of look through it all, because the thing is, to a certain extent, economics actually does run in part on the confidence and belief of the participants in the market. If investors become more cynical, they might pull capital out and, sort of exacerbate certain trends and things like that. So it's an area like politics where belief and confidence actually plays a decent role, at least in the particular timing of how things shake out. Therefore, it's in the interest of people who are economists and are sort of trying to steer the economy in one way or another, or delay this or prolong that. It's in their interest to get people to believe different kinds of spin, different sort of fables, different kinds of bias. And so you got to kind of wade through that. But if you get into the raw data of what's going on with employment and what's going on with the stock market, what's going on with prices and interest rates, you can get more of an accurate picture of where things are clearly headed. So it may be that the time that was bought by the post-2008 measures is running out and there's a hard landing incoming. There's been a lot of soft landing propaganda being put out there, but I think I have a hard time thinking that the people writing, soft landing, not a big crash, even believe it themselves. So it sort of comes off as weak and desperate. So, and my question about this is, we had the whole too big to fail situation, and we had the government not just, or the Fed, not just cutting interest rates, but actually just going in and buying stuff through quantitative easing, basically handing out money. And they've done that, and they've done that, and they just did quantitative easing round 4 recently. We're up to 9 trillion in assets, like there's just more being held than ever before. They also haven't successfully ever backed off of this, and it's a real question of whether they can do quantitative tightening in a way that doesn't cause a gigantic crash and basically just go back to the 2008-2009 situation again. But the trade-off of that is if they don't start tightening it, we're going to be dealing with just rampant inflation. And I mean, there's going to be consequences of that as well, as people are unable to afford, to engage in transactions of any kind. So anyway, that's sort of one thing I'd like to get into, and we have a number of articles and even covering some of the basics for people who might not be familiar with all the ins and outs of what is quantitative easing and what is going on with the housing market and inflation and prices generally. We'll look at the specifics of a lot of that. The second topic that I don't think we're going to get to today is like, okay, well, that's the U.S., and that's sort of global capitalism as it centers around the U.S., which is the current world order. Of course, we know China is currently the second largest economy in the world. They've stated that they have no desire to sort of be the biggest or rule the world or whatever. Capitalism, which they're allowing an awful lot of, has just certain inbuilt demands and motivations and a logic to it that takes you in certain directions when you engage in capitalist practices that, whether they like it or not, they may end up in that position really soon. And China, of course, is in the BRICS sort of alternative capitalist bloc that is seeming to pose something of a challenge to the existing sort of US, EU-centered capitalist order. And so they're rivaling it with this other capitalist order. BRICS as a term was actually coined by a Goldman Sachs investment strategist back in, I think, like 2000, early 2000s, it was a while ago. And basically looking at emerging capital markets and, where can Western capitalists put their money next as far as trying to profit off of building up emerging markets. And so BRICS was the acronym that he came up with. And now there's this thing. So you got the multipolarity bros championing the liberal theory that, because it is centered in capitalism, of a multipolar capitalist world peace. When you get big rival blocks of imperialists, advanced capitalist powers, usually actually what that results in is a world war, not in peace or, let alone socialism. Social revolution is what actually results in socialism, not just more different blocks of capitalists. But we need to think critically about that. The U.S. is obviously going through crisis after crisis because it's running on capitalism. How much of that's going to spill over into China? What's the situation in Russia right now, which a lot of people are, I think, deeply wrongly championing. The Russian ruble is doing terribly. Again, after the invasion early last year, it briefly rallied and then kind of held there for a while. And really, this entire year, after the sanctions started kicking in like December, January, the ruble has been declining in value, really, like I think 40% or more. And it seems to be still on the way down. It's back to a 1 to 100 level of the dollar versus the ruble. And they had an emergency meeting to raise interest rates in Russia, raised it to, I think, 12%. They had a 1 week rally, and then it started going back down again in value. So anyway, they're walking a really tight balance, doing tons of war spending, trying to protect their currency, but you can't help but feel like it's juggling plates that eventually are going to smash on the floor, and it's just sort of a matter of time because it's too precarious. So whether it's ruble versus yuan, ruble versus rupee, whatever, it's not doing well. And we'll look some more at that. Also, BRICS in general, there's a big, the multipolarity. People are like, oh, they're going to make their own currency. Well, there was just a BRICS summit. In fact, they did not agree to make their own currency. The issue here is, are they going to de-dollarize? Because right now, particularly oil and gas is denominated and traded in US dollars. So if there was a move away from the US dollar, that petrodollar idea, that could weaken the US dollar and make room for other big capitalists to come to the table. And then, probably they'll end up having some kind of military conflict. But yeah, BRICS didn't do a new currency. There's no real signs of that currently. Also, one of the major things that the BRICS people have in common, they don't really have that much in common. Again, it was coined by a Goldman Sachs investment guy of just lumping these things together as emerging markets. It's not really like a true political alliance in that sense, although they do meet up now. The main thing that they have in common is that all these countries have China as their major or main trading partner. So, BRICS is, you could think of it more as if the US EU thing is that imperialist bloc that tends to revolve most around the US, BRICS is kind of more the one that revolves around China for major trade deals. But we have some articles on that. We'll look into some specifics, but that probably won't be today. So anyway, that's what's coming up. Beyond this, there's a lot of other articles and, like I said, COVID updates. So plenty of numbered live streams yet to come. All right, so that said, let's look first, before we get into the chat or anything today, at what is new at Socialism for All. So first of all, what videos have been posted since the last stream? Well, here we've got the last stream. And the last stream we went kind of crazy with like 2 weeks ago. It was done on a Saturday, and the stream, the finished product, ended up being like 5.5 hours. We're actually streaming for longer than that. I had a really long block of free time, and I decided to just go for it. So anyway, since then, we've done 3 readings from the Homeless Industrial Complex playlist. We're now up to like 10 or 11 entries on that playlist, and we're going to keep going month by month. Also, 4, right? Because it's Dear Mitch, Infrastructures of Community, Rethinking the Homeless Crisis, and The Power of the People. I missed that one. So 4 new entries on that list. Also, I've started Lavender Red by Leslie Feinberg, which I have subtitled When LGBTQ plus history meets socialist history, because that's pretty much what it's about. She goes back to the days, like 1900, the days as the Russian Revolution was building up, and also the Social Democratic Party in Germany, and its intersections with the gay rights struggles, and that is pretty significant, and it's something people should know about. That's a very long series. As you can see, each of those clips, you got parts 1 through 3 is 24 minutes, parts 4 through 6 is 37 minutes. So we could say that each 3-part chunk averages about a half an hour. There's 120 chunks. This is a series that Leslie Feinberg of the Workers' World Party wrote over a several-year period from 2004 to 2008. So basically, I don't know, if I'm working on a long audiobook, as I actually am right now, as you may know, as far as the older theory texts, we're in the Rosa Luxemburg series, which actually has a couple of Lenin ones sprinkled in because some of the Rosa pieces are responses and critiques of Lenin, which if you haven't read the Lenin thing, you're not going to know what she's talking about. So in this case, we're starting off having to do a 9-hour Lenin audiobook, which is one step forward, two steps back, the crisis in our party. So that's not going to be up for a little while, being that it is 9 hours. I will get it done as quickly as I can. But in the meantime, you'll probably see it. I think it's good to have some of these other sort of ongoing side series as well. So that's what's new on the channel as far as videos. As far as other stuff being new on the channel, so as I did announce, put your mask back on. A COVID-19 surge is happening now. See the second pick or go to the website biobot.io/data, biobot.io/data. We're back to February levels. As of the current update, the current amount of COVID circulating as indicated by the wastewater is equivalent to about February 15. So we're like squarely back into winter levels, and it's only early September. So, and this is what I tend to lead with, even mild COVID-19, like, that you might experience as just like a cold, as far as you might get the sniffles, you might have a cough, you might feel weak and achy and tired and whatever for, a week or two. Even that can be causing damage to your major organs, such as brain mass loss. That's really bad. That's going to impair your cognition, your memory, executive functioning, other things that you really need. And basically they found in the brain studies, COVID can age the brain equivalent to like a decade of natural aging. So you do not want to catch this thing. Put the mask back on. And just going off of that right now, let's look at Biobot. What does it actually look like? So that's where we are. And as you can see, we've been in a sustained increase, about a 40-degree angle there, 35, 40-degree angle, climbing for 2 months now, roughly. And like I said, we're back to like February levels. In fact, if you were to, get a ruler and put it across the screen, the number of times we've been at this level, this is, we're well on our way to a full surge. I consider like a full surge between 800 and 1,000 copies of virus per milliliter. That's that first gray line. Like when it gets up around there, like 800, 900, 1,000, that's really bad. And outside of the Omicron peak, the one right in the middle over the January 2022 marker, outside of that, 800, 900, that's a bad surge. So we're at over 600 now. Let's zoom in a little bit just to take a look at that. Yeah, so you can see over 600. I think it's at like 615 or something like that now. By far the highest point in the last 6 months, and climbing. Let's look at it on the regional view. And you can see that all 4 regions are climbing at slightly different rates, but I think one thing that's significant, the Northeast tends to be the leading region. New York City's there. There's a lot, large cities, Philadelphia, New York, Boston, and that tends to be the region of the U.S., and just tons and tons of people. That tends to be the region that's leading. And in this case, the Southeast, everything from Texas up to West Virginia, down to Florida, is right up there with it, basically at the exact same level. And then the Midwest, which was declining for 3 weeks or so, is back on the rise again pretty sharply. And this is something that you see. I want to show you, I got 5 screenshots here of counties. So Biobot also lets you look at things by county. And it's really interesting to scroll through these because some places are really close to the sort of national average, which is shown here with the light blue line. The darker blue line is that county specifically. Some of them are close to the national average. Like you look at the Alameda County, California, in the top center. Yeah, that's pretty closely following the national curve. Same thing with Alexandria City, Virginia. Next to it, although in both cases there's also short spikes. But if you go right underneath that, Allen County, Kansas, shooting up at an 85-degree angle, hitting 750. How high is that going to go? But some of these places, so like over on the left side, Allegheny County, Virginia, they about a month ago had a peak that hit 2,000 copies of virus per milliliter of sewage. That's a huge spike, and that was active for several weeks. You know how many people got infected? You know how much damage to people's bodies occurred during that time? A lot. And then they had another mini surge, quote, mini surge of 1,000 right after that. They're in another lull, but what's the next spike going to be? Right under that, Anderson County, South Carolina, recently almost hit 1,000. And then Androscoggin County, Maine, in the lower right, basically almost hit 900, is coming down slightly, although again, with the overall trend rising, will it go back up at some point after, falling briefly? Let's keep going. You can see there, top middle, Boone County, 1,200. Bradley County next to it, 1,500. So, there are places, like I said, that follow the national average. Like you look at the bottom three, Butler County and the other two, they follow the curve fairly closely. They're in the sort of 600 range. But if you dig through, and not every county in the U.S. is represented here, but you can find some outliers that are like, wow, glad I don't live there. Like who knows what's going on in Clackamas County, Oregon, on the left side, middle row. As of, 4 months ago, they were having a spike that went probably well over 1,200, and then they just haven't been keeping track since then. Got a couple more here to look at. So, yeah, okay. As far as the biggest spike, you have, the top row, there's a few, but Essex County, Massachusetts, they just had a spike of 1,000, and it's coming down slightly, but where will it end up? Essex County, New Jersey, on the next row, following the national average very closely. Also Fairfield County, Connecticut, right next to it, following the national average. But then if we jump down to the bottom, look at the bottom right, Franklin County, Maine. About a month and a half ago, they had a spike of 4,000. Is that like everyone in the county got infected at the same time? What happened? But that's a major surge right there. So with these variants, it seems like you can get sort of short-lived but very intense peaks. And there are some things happening, I would imagine that to be pretty rural. Looking at the top here, Franklin County, Pennsylvania, they're at 1,750 and climbing at like an 85-degree angle. Same row, Franklin County, Vermont, even higher, 2,700 and shooting up again, 85-degree angle. That's serious spread. And, real outliers as far as the numbers. So it depends what county you're in. If you're closer to the average of maybe you got 400 to 600, or some of these places, and these are just examples, I just went up to G and I skipped some. But I just wanted to show there are some outliers going on here where particular counties are having huge outbreaks. And you got to mask. You really, really got to mask. So anyway, wanted to show that as far as the COVID stuff. And yeah. So what else is new on the channel here? That I guess was just our quick COVID update there. We had the death of Mikhail Gorbachev was 1 year ago, as of about a week ago. Had a nice meme there from Christy Olsen on Blue Sky. Gorbachev eating a slice of pizza as he is crushed by the Pizza Hut section of the Berlin Wall in hell. Now, Gorbachev, really, I got another one for you. You may have seen this circulating a few years ago. That's when I saw it. But this guy had some nerve. This was an interview from 2020, quoting Gorbachev as saying, We need a new economic model. The planet is overburdened. Gee, if only there were some other economic model. Nah, I don't know what that model would be. Hey, was he the head of a major socialist federation? Anyway, you can look that up. I was going to pull the video and show it. I don't even want to, but yeah, we need a new economic model. That is I'm speechless. I don't know. Anyway, what else do we have going on? Cornel West. Okay. So here I have running this channel, being a communist, and trying to comment in some meaningful way on U.S. politics, and specifically the politics of the broad U.S. left. That obviously includes a small amount of communists, Marxists, Marxist-Leninists, other kinds of socialists that are not actually Marxist, but sort of, consider that they would like to see an end to capitalism, and of course, more reactionary, more right-wing, the right wing of the broad U.S. left, more like social democrat reformer types. I sort of put the dividing line as, do you want to see an end to capitalism or not? If you don't, you're on what I would call the right side of the political spectrum. If you do want to see an end to capitalism, you're on the left side. That's sort of my gauge for it. But anyway, so this thing called the Green Party exists. It's mainly, hasn't gained a lot of traction. It was formed, I think, in 1984, so in the midst of the Reagan-Bush years, and the days of the moral majority and neoliberal policies really kicking into effect at that point. And it has not really established itself as a party as much more than a protest vote, although it does tend to attract activists who are involved in some kind of social justice, organizing of some type. And they have some real people in there. For example, about 10 years ago, their vice presidential candidate was Sherry Honkala, who had been involved in the Poor People's Campaign and, was a homelessness activist and, actually kind of came from the trenches of doing some grassroots organizing. The problem in the U.S. is class consciousness is low, struggle is low. We don't have a full-on fascist police state where you have no rights at all. But when it comes to actually doing something that matters, politically protesting, there is pretty much a fascist police state. As soon as you start doing something that actually matters, for example, like all the people who were protesting the oil pipelines, and they're getting sentenced to 5 years in jail, 10 years in jail. They're getting, or the Stop Cop City protesters that are getting hit with RICO charges and terrorism charges for handing out a leaflet against building this big cop training center. Sorry, that's not terrorism, but that's how the state is treating it. And so, yeah, it's like they want to keep the appearance of freedom, democracy. People have the freedom to go buy shit and watch TV and whatever. And they can say whatever they want as long as it's not in any kind of organized way, as long as it sort of doesn't matter. So the Green Party, it is what it is. And my personal opinion is I would really prefer to see something start building up in the U.S. as class consciousness sharpens, because Bernie Sanders obviously rallied a lot of people to come out of the woodwork, rallied them by the stadium full, then fed them into the Democratic Party. Well, unfortunately, building the Democratic Party, that's a capitalist-controlled party. It's an imperialist party. It's been around since 1828. It's as much a part of this system as any party, as you can be. And so, building up that party is building up your enemy. It's not a suitable forum for proletarian ideological struggle. So we need something else. And what often happens with self-styled, U.S. leftists, and I don't mean that in a purely derogatory way. I mean people who think of themselves as, I am on the left. We as communists might debate how much they're actually on the left. But the point is, people who consider themselves left and they would like to see a change, maybe they want to see it easier to form labor unions. Maybe they want to see universal health care. Maybe they want to see increase civil rights in a variety of different areas. Okay, I would consider you to be probably in the broad left. It's somewhat skewed because the United States is so far behind as far as, the change that we need. We're like 50 years behind, so catching up will take quite a while. But point is, when people get to this point that they would like to see some change, what often happens is they start working within the Democratic Party, and then when they see that that doesn't work, and that's practically impossible, as has been shown decade after decade after decade, you can't really do that, then they drop out entirely. I would rather that people not just drop out, but start building up some kind of broad, big tent, broad left thing. Whether that's DSA, whether that's the Green Party. Obviously, like, we as communists are going to criticize and struggle against some aspects of organizations like that. They're not communist organizations, and they're, social democrats have shown themselves to be deeply reactionary in a lot of ways that really matter. So, I mean, there's real things you can't just gloss over there. But the point being, we need the working class of the United States to start organizing independently of the Democratic Party, and versus doing nothing at all and versus just sitting around. I'd much rather see people, get involved with a DSA or Green Party, at least as a stepping stone. And I think that from there, with the swell in class consciousness that can come out of that kind of work, I think we'll work out some of the other problems down the line. But if people aren't even taking that first step, I don't know how we get out of the hole that we're in. Anyway, all that said, I have been a supporter, sometimes more casually, sometimes more actively, of the Green Party. I would, I've voted for them many times, and have worked with the Green Party in real life, and I'm a friend of the Green Party in general. That said, there are different sort of wings and factions within the Green Party, and I think Cornel West, who initially, if you recall, announced his candidacy in the Movement for a People's Party, pseudo-party, which is basically fascist. That's where he started out. I think he's a cheesy, grifting charlatan. I think he's a bad candidate. Yes, he's high profile, but I just do not think he's a good candidate. There have been many indications to me that this is the case. I would much rather see the Green Party go with somebody else, not from this sort of contrarian grifter wing of the party. But, the left wing of the Greens is smaller, sort of eco-socialist side. But, as I said in this post, free advice to anyone running for president of the United States. And by the way, Cornel West does not yet have the Green Party nomination. That will be decided at the Green Party convention in July next year. So they have primaries and they decide that. And there are a number of other people running. But anyway, when you run for president and you have tons of shit in your closet, it's going to come out, okay? That's just how it works. You should expect that. So, of course, the sort of, mainstream establishment stuff hits him with, hey, did you realize that you owe the IRS $500,000? And then apparently there's also this other outstanding child support thing of $50,000. I don't know what the deal is with that. And it's not me raising this. What I'm raising is, hey, when you're running for president, if you don't have like ready to go answers for that stuff, you look like a gigantic idiot. And so does everyone who is supporting you. This isn't just some fucking vanity run for him like it would be with the People's Party. You're in the Green Party now. That party, is funded and supported and volunteered for by millions of people. You're making them all look like jackasses if this is what the party's about. Like, he was asked about these things, like, hey, you owe $500,000 in back taxes? And he just tried to sputter out some kind of thing about how he's broke. I mean, he's on record as making $200,000 a year. That's not a good answer. This is... It's like for the libertarians, and don't get me wrong, scumbag crypto-fascist party, but the principle holds of when you have a candidate who looks like an asshole, your party looks like a bunch of assholes because he is your king, he's your representative. Gary Johnson's Aleppo moment when, he was asked about, what do you think about Aleppo? And he's like, and what is Aleppo? And they're like, yeah, there's sort of a major conflict going on there. And there's a beautiful moment where he's like, oh, right. Like, you can see it on his face, just like, I just shit the bed. Yeah, I don't think Cornel West is a good candidate, and he's clearly unprepared for this run. I don't know, what's going on here, but here's what I actually wrote, because I got a lot of comments on this of people going, hey, why do you care about his taxes? I didn't say I care about his taxes. I said this is an obvious political blunder. Do you grasp the difference there? So here's what I wrote. Free advice to anyone running for president of the United States. When they ask you about the $50,000 you owe in child support and the $500,000 you owe the IRS, don't dodge the questions. It makes you look ridiculous. I mean, an answer like, yeah, I'm deliberately not funding the U.S. empire. That's my back taxes situation. And as for the child support thing, there's a misunderstanding or whatever. I don't know what the story is. But he didn't say that, my understanding. He was just like, I'm broke. And he made some really weird, like characteristically weird statement, in the Cornel West style of like, I'm broke financially, something or other, communally, I am broke. What? Don't you make $200,000 a year? You're not broke. Anyway, that's a really, really bad answer. So as I said, and I would like to see, the Green Party US has 10 months to come up with a better candidate, maybe a labor leader. And if you follow the footnote there are 9 other candidates in the Green Party primaries already. We're going to look at that in a second. I wanted to point out also, though, that West was spotted this week at the sentencing hearing of Mark Ridley Thomas, an LA official who was convicted of, quote, seven felonies: bribery, conspiracy, 4 counts of honest services wire fraud, and 1 count of honest services mail fraud, in a scheme in which he extracted benefits from USC for himself and his son while on LA County's powerful board of supervisors. That's quoting the LA Times. So West, then there's video of it if you follow the link that I put there, of him going to support his friend. As the poster was saying, and the poster is an activist with Knock LA, which is a grassroots homeless advocacy and support organization, which actually coincidentally was featured in our most recent reading, Infrastructures of Community, which I showed you there. It's on the Homeless Industrial Complex playlist. The guy was like, you're running as a, quote, outsider, but what can be more insidery than supporting a politician who was just convicted of 7 felonies of basically, private gain. He was like funneling money out of the college system into his son's like bank account. So that's not really something you want to be supporting. As far as this guy himself, there's a narrative, Mark Ridley Thomas, there's a narrative that he's like this champion of the homeless. However, as Knock LA, which works with people on the ground, actually was saying, that he, quote, introduced legislation for LA Municipal Code 4118 in 2021, which bans sitting, lying, or sleeping, or storing, using, maintaining, or placing personal property in the public right-of-way around transportation structures, which is everything from driveways to freeway underpasses. So far, the measure has been used to effectively ban homeless people from taking up space at over 140 sites across the city, with $2 million allotted by the council for the signage alone. So that's this guy, kind of a cheesy scumbag, yet West felt it was important as part of his, outreach to the broad U.S. left, I guess, to go and support him at his sentencing hearing. Then when people asked him outside, and there's another link there, that the Vegan Forest on Twitter link, you can see the video. West was asked why he was supporting an LA politics insider convicted of bribery, and he didn't answer the question, and then his companion starts shooing the person away. The person was very non-confrontational, gave them physical space. They said, you're putting his life in danger. No, you can see the video. Nothing of the kind was happening. And as a random commenter that I'm mutuals with put it, and I thought this was funny, starting to think that this Harvard professor turned TV gadfly might not be on the level regarding his commitment to left-wing politics. Yeah, you're not alone in that. I'm telling you, just do not think he's a good candidate. The same guy that was calling, I mean, he's in the Jimmy Dore, Chris Hedges space of the Movement for the People's Party, and also, was just referred to Russell Brand, I mean, extreme far right, pushes the Great Reset and all that kind of stuff, as a quote progressive gem. That was his description of Russell Brand. Also referred to Ronald Reagan as a quote freedom fighter against vicious forms of communism. So yeah, no, not Cornel West. Can we come up with somebody else? So here are some of the other candidates at the FEC website. I don't know who most of these people are, but I will try to do a rundown on them in future streams. So we got Mason Vincent Siszewski, is that? Adam Hollick, Anita Eileen Bell, Robert Spencer Cook the fourth. For some reason, Mason Vincent is listed through 4 times on here. Oh, so there's actually not that many candidates because this guy's listed 4 times. So, okay, fair enough. There are fewer then. Also, we have Jackie Dwayne Tate, Tyler Gray, and Randy Toller running. I believe that there is someone else. I think there was a woman who declared as well. Not Anita Eileen Bell. I think there was another woman who declared as well. So we'll try to do a rundown on people from within the Green Party who are also running. Again, it was an afterthought to Cornel West to run in the Green Party, and I've written about this before. I think the whole thing is just not a good look for the Green Party and not the direction that I would like to see the Green Party go in. And guess what? I have a YouTube channel, and that's my advocacy, and that's what I'm going to talk about. A lot of people have been upset about this, and my response of, you get this alternating cycle of, I'm a Green Party entryist and therefore not a communist. No, I just want to see people get off the couch and do something rather than just being terminally online and having no real-world political experience. If the Green Party is the only thing in your area, go check it out. Meet people, shake hands, network. You know what I mean? You're probably going to find out about projects you're not going to find out about any other way. By doing that, you're going to meet neat people, find out some other stuff, and opportunities for supporting class struggle in your area. So you get that when you suggest that people try to do something. And then alternately, if you criticize Cornel West specifically, even though he's not really a Green and kind of sucks, then you're a Democratic Party shill. So, you really can't win and whatever. It's like these people's opinions are not, their opinions are not significant to me, but there are more than a few of them. And this is, I think, people who got involved in this stuff yesterday and they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. My advice to them would be shut the fuck up and, listen more than you're talking. Anyway, speaking of terrible, quote, leftists, here's one from Party of Nazbols, Party of, quote, Communists USA, posting on Twitter, memorial, a year ago today, Daria Dugina was murdered in a cowardly car bombing. May your soul rest in peace. They were trying to get her daddy, Russian fascist imperial theorist Alexander Dugin. Hats off. What the fuck? You're a communist posting this? No. You don't kiss fascist ass like that. So, but this is, par for the course. PCUSA has sucked for as long as I've been doing this channel. It's in that sort of Caleb Maupin, Alexander Dugin fucking fascist jerk-off circle. Fuck you. So anyway. And if PCUSA is suing a splinter group, the ACB, American Council of Bolsheviks, in U.S. federal court for like $500,000. There's a fundraiser for ACB if you want to support them in their federal defense against Party of Nazbols USA. What else? More minor news. Guess I'm on Tumblr now since I got off of Twitter. Blue Sky is feeling less and less like an empty room, as one person put it. There are more people on there, and I have been handing out Blue Sky codes left and right. If you have unused Blue Sky codes that you don't know what to do with, and you'd like to see more communists on Blue Sky, please give them to me. I am glad to redistribute them. I know many communists who are not yet on Blue Sky and would like to be. So I can take your unused Blue Sky codes if you don't have anybody to give them to, I can give them to communists for you. But anyway, I set up a Tumblr because why the fuck not? Actually, specifically, somebody in the last stream was talking about how they were on Tumblr, and I was like, why not? It's free. So I set one up. If you're on Tumblr, go give me a follow. And actually, I'm starting to use the Blue Sky and Mastodon, and I guess Tumblr now too, a lot more. And you know what? Like I said before, unlike Twitter, it doesn't feel like I've just been in a 3-hour-long car crash after, using it for a while. So much more peaceful experience using that. Anyway, I think that's most of the new stuff up on the channel. I think that's everything, actually. So there was just one other note that I wanted to make, which was there's an interview with Kopmala Harris in which she is asked about Biden's age. So apparently, I think this was an AP poll, 77% of Americans in general think that Joe Biden's age is like an issue to be concerned about. And that included 69% of Democrats. So more than 2 out of 3 Democrats are concerned about Joe Biden's age. Young Democratic voters hate Joe Biden. I mean, it's a real liability. And she, of course, gave, sort of a bizarre answer. Kopmala she was looking pretty vibrant when she started this gig. I think this job has aged her significantly. Sometimes there's just like a really striking before and after, and it's men and women, and it's just sometimes, you see people go into a situation and just they come out and it's like their hair's white, they got wrinkles now. Kopmala kind of gave me that impression. She used to be a lot more vivacious, and in that interview I was like, damn, she looks old now. And it's only been a few years. All right, anyway. All right, so that's basically the odds and ends and housekeeping that I wanted to get out of the way. And with it out of the way, let's go into the chat for a while, and then we will do some 2008, the boomerang effect coming back soon. Wow, we're up to 1,324 followers on Twitch. Last time I looked, it was like, I think we've gained like 100 since I last looked. So anyway, let me scroll up and catch the chat. Okay, has anyone seen the protests in Chad? No, I haven't. So of course that's in that Sahel region where there's been a lot of Russia-assisted military coups lately. I'm deeply skeptical of what's going on with that. Of course, Niger, Mali, other countries in that area, and the ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States, deeply unsettled by the instability. I've had people, we discussed this in the last stream at length. I'm very dubious of where this is going to go next. Seems to me to be an emerging front in the Russia versus NATO conflict. An emerging front is sort of these countries, and not that they wouldn't have any legitimate grievances against France and the US, who had previously, well, I think and still are, to a certain extent, providing security services because, jihadis, like fundamentalist terrorist groups, are spreading throughout that region, and it's really violent and awful. And but apparently they're kicking the French out and then switching over to Russia. So I don't know where that's going now that the Wagner Group, or the Wagner Group, the basically Russian private mercenary company, or like Blackwater with Russian characteristics, as somebody put it. Now that Prigozhin has been assassinated, kind of a mess. Like, we'll see what's going on as far as stability. And like I said, we're probably going to get into that in more of the next stream. Do want to deal with the U.S. sort of global capitalist crisis first. But no, I haven't seen what's going on in Chad. But anyway, people trying to bill this as like a people's revolution. Yeah, no. I think you need to check a lot more boxes to qualify as a people's revolution. This seems to be, just switching alliances with one large capitalist, trading them for another. There's a lot of time that needs to pass before we can evaluate the outcomes of this. Still very, very murky. And I really encourage people, don't leap to conclusions in these situations with flimsy evidence, which is exactly what we have. We don't know what's going on there yet. Don't leap to conclusions and start spouting out all kinds of crazy propaganda on the internet. That really is just not good. But of course, that's what the Russia boosters do. That's par for the course with the Russia simps. And I must say, Blue Sky, virtually zero Russia simps. So if you've been on the fence about getting onto Blue Sky, if somebody gives you a code, take it. It's so refreshing versus Twitter. It's a lot more fun. Spirits tend to be a bit higher. People joke around a lot more. And it's, again, not this crushing rush of propaganda that you get on Twitter, for example, that just makes it so frustrating to use. So I mentioned that there is a Thin Blue Lies episode coming up soon. That's the podcast that I do with Sal, another streamer. And that is being written right now. I'm not sure exactly when it's going to be out. But again, the topic is some Eighth Amendment issues in prisons, as far as prison guards either running sort of private fight clubs where they make inmates fight each other for their own amusement, or more large-scale gladiator fights where prison officials are putting gangs in the yard at the same time and then just watching them kill each other, basically, again, in clear violation of their duty to protect the bodily integrity of prisoners under their care. And they're clearly doing it deliberately because that's the outcome every single time, and they're continuing to do it. So anyway, that's what's coming up soon. I'm not sure exactly when, the next few weeks sometime. I saw Destiny, the reviled capitalist streamer, say that boom and bust is a sign of capitalist strength because it booms again. What if I told you you could have a system that just had sustained stability and didn't, every few years throw tons of people out of work, out of their houses, didn't make kids live with their families in motels as they're trying to go to school because they're homeless? What if I told you we could have a system that didn't have boom and bust, but operated according to a rational plan and just provided a solid baseline of dignity and, basic support and prosperity where people can have their needs met and then go and live their lives and get a good education and, increase their literacy and all the other things that we see happen in socialist countries. Capitalist market anarchy, capitalism breaks down repeatedly because of crises of overproduction, and it cannot self-regulate in this way. So it'll constantly have these crises, and over time, it trends towards complete crash, like complete collapse, complete crisis from which it actually cannot recover. So as far as Destiny's point that it will boom again, not forever, not forever. Capitalism has a definite lifespan. It's like it goes up and down and up and down, and it gets worse and worse, and eventually it just breaks. And I think we may actually be reaching that point, which is kind of what the major topic of the stream is going to be when we start getting into the articles. I also heard this week that the housing prices will never plummet and will keep going up and up and up. And I was like, what? Very amateur economist, but that doesn't sound right. No. We're in record high inflation right now, like twice as large as the bubble that preceded the 2008 crash. When this comes down, it's going to be awful. And that's why the Fed keeps pumping money. They are up to $9 trillion in assets. And the one time that they did try to come down with quantitative tightening in 2017, 2018, there was a stock market crash. And then, quote, because of COVID, but you got to think they were thinking about it already, they did a fourth round of quantitative easing, and they just basically almost like doubled the amount of intervention of buying stuff up. So we may have passed the point where the system can function without them continually trying to inflate it and inflate it and inflate it. And no, prices can't stay high forever because we're already at a point, and we'll get into this more, where the velocity of house sales, for example, has slowed to a crawl. There's 2.3 sales per year per realtor on average right now. And overall, just the number of house sales has slowed to a crawl. Why? It's unaffordable. It's just like, my personal number of luxury car purchases is at zero. Why? I can't afford it. And so the population in general can't afford these housing prices. 1 in 5 of houses in the US right now, so 20%, is owned by investors. They bought at some point in the last 10 years when prices were lower, and they have jacked up the prices, hoping to sort of pump and dump. But nobody can even afford them at this point. The only catch is that shelter is a basic need. Although, plenty of people that breaks and then they end up homeless. But shelter is a basic need. So there's more pressure on people to buy even unaffordable housing, than there would be for many other things that the price might be too high on. Like food also. It's a necessity. You can't just go without. So you're going to have to buy it even if the prices go high. But even then, you get into a juggling act. And then what happens when there is a slowdown as far as unemployment going up? Because right now also the number of job openings is going down, and the unemployment rate just started ticking up. It's been falling for a long time since the pandemic, but it just started ticking up again recently. And once it starts going up, it can go up very fast. So what happens when people who can barely afford the house that they bought lose their job? Well, then what happens also is then you have a forced sale because they can no longer make their mortgage payments. They might try to sell the house before they get into that hot water. So one of the features of the housing market, which is contributing to the really high prices right now, is lack of inventory. There's not a lot of houses out there on the market for sale. But if you get more forced sales due to the economic distress, like layoffs and things like that, or just investors, charging ridiculous prices and then not getting customers and deciding, fuck this, I'm going to sell the house back, then you get houses being dumped back on the market, which is going to force prices down. So no matter how you slice it, prices are coming back down again. The only way around that at all, it would be if they keep pumping money in, but then the inflation gets so bad and you run the risk of devaluing your currency too. So anyway, but we'll get into that more later. No, and it's not right, yeah. Loving the Leslie Feinberg readings. Me too. And like I said, it's a good thing I can knock out one of those in one sitting. Half hour to 45 minutes for me is like a good one sitting reading, because it does take longer than that to actually do it. I'll have to retake lines, and then I have to, export the video and all that kind of stuff. So that's a good one sitting thing for me, is doing, so it's like if the next long Lenin or Luxemburg reading isn't ready yet, I can do one of those, and we'll be going for months and months with that. So in fact, before I started reading it, I had estimated that I'd be able to do 12 sections per month and therefore do it in 10 months. I kind of don't think so, because they're actually longer than I thought. But anyway, it's I'm enjoying them a lot. And I think it's good to get into something other than just primary sources. Like this is actually in the public domain. It's released with, or not exactly public domain, but it's Creative Commons. As long as you credit workers.org, you're good to go. It's good to have a communist history book like that, and LGBTQ plus history book that is sort of Creative Commons, and we can just put it up. And it is more current and modern, and has, a perspective from the last, 15 to 20 years versus 100 years. So that is good. Does brain aging mean we could, in a few decades or even sooner, see huge upticks in dementia? Yes. Actually, if you just look up COVID and Parkinson's, or COVID and Alzheimer's, there's plenty of evidence that it can contribute to basically any kind of neurodegenerative disease, from what I've been reading. There's tons of research being done on COVID all the time, which is another reason why COVID deniers, if you're a COVID denier listening to this, I'm sorry, you are so far out of the loop. Go to PubMed. It's free. It's publicly accessible. Look at the research on COVID. People are like, the virus isn't real. What fucking planet are you living on? There is so much research on this disease. It's been studied extensively by now. Yes, anyway, there's lots of evidence that, in fact, I was just looking at something, we'll cover this in the next COVID thing, that the kind of damage it does in the brain leads to the sort of amyloid plaque and twisting that you see in Alzheimer's. So, yes, there could be major upticks in dementia. I would argue that even the, quote, brain fog that you see now, and I've had it, is a sort of form of dementia. It's really bad, and they're letting it rip. And there was somebody asking in a stream a little while ago about, are we going to see COVID protections come back? And at that time, I said I hadn't seen anything yet, because I hadn't. I am seeing a few things about some college campuses requiring masks again, but it is sparse. It's here and there, and we need a society-wide effort. That's Joe Biden's big contribution, is ending the collective response to the pandemic. We were all in it together. Now it's vax and relax and everybody's on their own. Fuck that. That's not a public health strategy. Okay, that's a personal health strategy. But we need a public health strategy here. So somebody looking at Biobot, there's literally only 3 counties even tracking it in my state. Yeah, I mean, this is, and again, why get involved in your local left? This is maybe something that a local coalition actually could maybe influence, is let's get wastewater tracking going on in more counties. That's an attainable goal. So yeah. The laxness on COVID is crazy. When I went to Japan last April, everyone was wearing masks. It was intense. Yeah, it's because culturally it's not politicized there. It's like people wear masks all the time in Japan. It's not a big deal. It's politicized here. All the fascists in this country just squawk endlessly about it. And it's just like, get over it. There's a serious airborne disease going around. Anyway, when I came back from Japan a few months ago, I barely saw anybody wearing them. When it was going on, I mean, there's more of a cultural precedent for that. I mean, I don't know. I haven't been to Japan, but I know many, many videos I've seen just on the news over the years and different things. I feel like any time that they show the subway, there's like always people masking. So not surprising that, that would have been, had a lot more compliance. Unfortunate, though, if they're no longer doing that. But anyway, maybe we can get clarification on that. Didn't Cornel West float the idea of running as a Democrat this year? I don't know. I didn't hear that. I think people were asking him, why don't you run in the Democratic Party? Because then you can get into the debates and stuff like that, maybe influence the party. And, like I said, I'm far from what people have tried to say, I'm a Democratic Party shill. Literally, what have I been saying? Anybody who's been listening to the stream knows. Like, the fundamental political task of the U.S. left is to break completely with the Democratic Party and with all capitalist parties. I've been saying that for years. Because when you run in the Dems, it's a dead end. Bernie Sanders proved this definitively, and it had been proved before that as well. But you've got a mountain of evidence from, what did Bernie Sanders change within the Democratic Party? He's like, we totally changed the Democratic Party. No, you didn't do anything. They gave him those committees. They were like, here, have some coloring books. They had the little Crayola 64, the built-in sharpener on it. And they let them scribble for a while. And then Biden took it, crumpled it into a ball, and tossed it over his shoulder. He's like, thank you very much. As I said, they made Bernie Sanders into the hood ornament. So, I don't think that Cornel West running as a Democrat is a good idea. I just think he sucks as a candidate. You know what I mean? I think he, as I said, is a step backward from Bernie. And somebody was asking me, can you break that down? Because, he's better on Israel-Palestine, for example, than Bernie is. I don't doubt that. I mean, overall, I think he's a cheesy, huckster. I think he's a bad candidate who is not serious. And that manifests in lots of ways, overt and subtle. I think he's not a step forward from Bernie Sanders. Sanders, I think, conveyed more seriousness in terms of actually mobilizing people and didn't start out his run in the fucking movement for a People's Party, an absolute joke of a pseudo-party run by an accused rapist. So lots of things there that I think make the Green Party, which already struggles with its reputation deeply. And they did run a more left-wing candidate, Howie Hawkins, in 2020, who I thought from a policy perspective was great. But everybody wet their diapers talking about, oh, he's no charisma. Whatever. look at the policy and the platform. This is the same people that are going to be like, policy, not party, policy, not politician. I thought they had an excellent platform under Howie Hawkins, and I thought that it was a shift to the left for the Green Party. But they got reduced turnout, or reduced percentage of the vote when Hawkins ran. And that might be also that it was 2020 and people were like, we got to get Trump out, and that may have been a factor as well. But anyway, I see there is a contrarian, libertarian adjacent grifter wing of the Greens. I think Jill Stein and Cornel West are more from that side of the party, to the extent that West, for example, is even in the party. I think that the left of the Greens, and so there's actually, I was just talking with somebody, this is as good a time to mention it as any. I'll make a plug here for, there's a number of eco-socialist Greens who I talk to. So if you look at the Green Socialist Organizing Project, this is a website at greensocialist.net. Let me get you the contact information of the person. They need people to help edit videos. If you contact, so on Discord, FaithSlayer202, who is looking for more people to volunteer to help them put together material for the Green Socialist 101 series, doing series on workers' rights, how to form a labor union. They're looking for people who know any kind of video editing software. They just need to make simple MP4 clips. And so if you look up on Twitter or Mastodon, Nathaniel A. Gregory is the person that you want to reach out to. If you're interested in getting involved in this and you can't find Nathaniel, just reach out to me. I can put you in touch. But anyway, so that's the wing of the Greens that I think there's actually more promise from, that not Marxist-Leninist, but considers themselves socialist. Howie Hawkins, I have, for example, an audiobook up on the channel about building a mass left party in the United States and modeling it after the old Socialist Party and having a mass membership model for that. And there's things to be engaged with there. So anyway, some of my thoughts on that, and I have been, following and loosely involved with the Green Party, sometimes loosely, sometimes more directly, for, 20 years now, so kind of know what I'm talking about. I had somebody tell me, you haven't been doing this as long as I have. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I have, actually. Odds are the average person on social media has not been doing this as long as I have, but all right. At a minimum, we've been doing it for comparable amounts of time. Yeah, as far as, fascism in the U.S., sort of maybe not applying day to day, especially if you're white. I mean, of course, if you are a person of color, and especially if you're black, the odds of being just murdered by a cop for no reason go way, way up. But, and that's the more you're engaged in something meaningful politically, your odds of running afoul of the U.S. crackdown on civil rights goes up. But as Health Revolt's pointing out, they straight up murdered Black Lives Matter leaders. The U.S. left has to have solidarity The U.S. left has to have solidarity to build a confederated left and bring mass politics back. That is hard. And again, as I was saying, I think the fundamental political task is to quit the Democratic Party and build something else. How do you do this? Like, how do you even get the class consciousness necessary for people to understand the dimensions and the shape of the struggle and the need and all of this kind of stuff, know which side they're on and even what sides there are, and even that there are sides. A lot of people who seem confused that there are even sides. Somebody's like, is there a class struggle going on here or what? But how are you going to get that even, the upswell in class consciousness? Well, I think rebuilding the labor unions is, this is dialectical. It's not entirely one then the other, because there are a lot of barriers to getting labor unions going. And it would really help, for example, to have repeal of restrictive labor laws that favor employers. You could make it much easier to form a labor union. And I think there's certain things in the works right now going on with that. But it's minimal, and it's sort of coming from like the NLRB rather than from the mass movement necessarily. So anyway, it is dialectical. Like, you can have legislation that makes it easier to rebuild the labor unions, but again, you're not going to have the political strength to get that legislation until you get, you see what I'm saying here. So yeah, rebuilding the labor movement may be a semi-prerequisite, or leading co-requisite, I guess we could say, to getting the political thing going. But yeah, having that baseline of class consciousness, that's the thing, and the struggle needs to be amplified before that's going to come back. I tried my hardest to get active in the Green Party, but apparently my state's Green Party dissolved last year, so there's nowhere for me to go. That's unfortunate. And yeah, that's the case. It's going to vary from state to state. And some places no longer have a Green Party, but some have a very well-established Green Party. So, look around, see what's active in your area. I'd really rather people do something than nothing. In most cases, that's going to be better. I mean, if you get involved with something and you feel like it's not a match and it's not a good fit, and, I've heard absolute horror stories, don't do it. Don't push yourself into it if you're getting a sense that this is really a bad organization, because being in a bad organization can really be a life-shattering experience. But, if it's neutral, but it's just not sort of, quote, Marxist enough, I mean, that's par for the course right now. And actually, I had a commenter ask a reasonable question the other day in the YouTube comments about, so basically they were asking, well, if what we need is Marxist unity, and there are a number of Marxist parties out there, there's CPUSA, there's PSL, there's this and that, why can't we sort of work on Marxist unity? I think the answer to that is these parties display heaping amounts, in some cases at least, of opportunism and revisionism, or there's a lot of kind of small groups, like there's a group that's 15 people over here, and there's a group that's 30 people over here, and they're still sort of just forming. As far as the more established parties, like CPUSA, that's struggled with opportunism toward the Democratic Party for the longest time and can't seem to shake it. How are they going to shake it? Can they shake it? Well, I think if they can, like I was saying, you need mass struggle generating a huge upsurge in class consciousness, which will spur the development of a new vanguard, because the vanguard, again, is a relative term. It just means the most class conscious portion. We'll arbitrarily say the vanguard is the most class conscious 10% of the working class, or 5%, or wherever you want to draw the line. It's totally arbitrary. It just means like it's the most class conscious portion, and then a vanguard party tries to organize that vanguard versus a mass party which tries to organize the masses. People have some amount of class consciousness, but they're not in that sort of vanguard of like just day and night. They're just eating, breathing, sleeping, the struggle and the history and economics and whatever else. Like, there's some people that are like that, and then there's a lot of people who care. They have some class consciousness, but they're just not in that vanguard, and then they're not going to be, and that's fine. It's a relative term. Not everyone can be in the vanguard. It's just not how it works. Anyway, but as that level of class consciousness on average comes up, I think you're going to see that struggle generating a better vanguard, and then more and more people are going to get out there and they're going to join CPUSA, because they're going to be like, hey, I think I'm a communist, and then they're going to join it. And they go, why the fuck are we supporting the Democrats? You know what I mean? This is what I was saying about DSA before. I'd rather have people, join an organization that doesn't pretend to be like Marxist-Leninist, for example, and then support the Democrats, than one that says it is Marxist-Leninist and then supports the Democrats. You know what I'm saying? It's like there's less of a distortion to me that way. It's like what you're getting matches more what you think you're getting, or as it's more as advertised. But yeah, as far as the thing that is supposed to be the Communist Party of the United States, consistently not living up to that in its national policy for years and years, and hence being something of a joke and not really a communist party. If that gets fixed, it gets fixed by thousands of people joining the party and going, hey, what the fuck are we doing? And then changing it. So if you get Marxist unity, I think the parties right now are in a state of disrepair, and they are lorded over by some relics. and there needs to be a clean sweep if anything's going to happen with them. My standing thing right now, if people are looking for a Marxist group, there is Politsturm International, Politsturm International. They have a YouTube channel by that name in English. They have international study groups based out of Russia, Armenia, Ukraine, and internationally. They also have a large Russian language YouTube channel. But, their opinion is that there isn't a good Communist Party right now, but they're doing study groups and things to, maybe help foment the creation of one. So anyway, I think that's realistic. And I think the parties that we currently have need like a thorough house cleaning. But who's going to do that house cleaning? Well, you would need lots and lots of very class-conscious people. Where are you going to get them? You're going to get them through lots and lots of mass struggle, so that's got to ramp up as well. Anyway, I think a mass influx of socialists into the Green Party could utilize it pretty well. I think, as Howie Hawkins was pitching it, the Green Party could be a good mass party, in conjunction with sort of, some sort of overall socialist strategy for the country. So yeah, it could fulfill that role potentially. It depends how debased are people going to let it get with the Jimmy Dores and the Cornel Wests and whatever, sort of dragging it through their media gadfly sort of thing. What do we think about Trotsky? I mean, that's a very broad question. Not a supporter of Trotsky. This is a Marxist-Leninist channel, so anti-Trotsky. Did Trotsky ever do a good thing in his life? Yeah, sure, but consistently, across the political career, there was lots of. I don't want to go into a whole thing on Trotsky right now. If you want to sort of have a quick summary, there's a piece by Lenin. If you just search on the channel Lenin on Trotsky, disruption of unity under cover of outcry for something like that, is basically a 45-minute scathing attack on Trotsky, detailing a lot of the problems with Trotsky's long-standing career. Now, Trotsky did make contributions to the revolution with the army and things like that. That's undeniable. Then in the 20s and 30s, there were a lot of sort of bad political directions that sort of Trotsky as politician resuming again just took things in a number of bad ways. If you're interested in that topic as well, of sort of Marxist-Leninist criticisms of Trotskyism, I would recommend the Finnish Bolsheviks channel. There's ample anti-Trotskyist content there. What is the meaning of green capitalism? Green capitalism is a rebranding image campaign of capitalism that you can have the capitalist economic system where industry is privately owned and run for profit on a market anarchy basis, with all the capitalists just sort of doing whatever they feel like and speculating and venturing this here and that there. And that somehow that's not going to be environmentally destructive. China right now, for example, engaging in a massive campaign to appear more, green and ecologically friendly, also allowing very large amounts of capitalism. These things are in direct contradiction. Capitalists will always try to export and externalize the costs, including the environmental costs, of their operations onto the community. And yeah, I mean, green capitalism might be something like you try to make the capitalists like more accountable for that, but in the end, most of it just winds up being the cost of doing business. And as society needs goods and services produced, you wind up with just a sort of too big to fail situation in the end, where it's like, we can't afford to regulate these companies, so we're just going to have to deal with the pollution because, whatever company just has to exist. And if we regulate it anymore, we could risk like an economic and societal collapse. And what they don't say is, and also socialist revolution, if the people are organized to do that. But yeah, green capitalism is where capitalism pretends that it can be ecologically sustainable. It cannot be. Would recommend another channel, and these are linked off of the channels tab at the Socialism for All YouTube. Recommend another channel, Best D Marx, BESD period Marx, that they have some videos about how green capitalism is alive. All right. 50,000 in child support is an entire kid's life, lol. Yeah, I don't know what the deal is there. Again, I'm not the one that like dredged up this case against him. I'm just saying, when you run for president, you're going to get hit with stuff. You look like a fucking clown if you haven't like anticipated this basic thing. I don't think he's running a serious campaign. I think that he is Cornel West. I think that he is running a book tour, you know, much like Marianne Williamson. Obviously, a somewhat more radical themed one than Marianne Williamson is doing in the Democratic Party, but nonetheless, it's not a serious campaign. You know, it's Chris Hedges, who was involved with the Nader campaign, you know, was saying, and is involved with West again, because it's the same group of people around Movement for a People's Party. They basically do just view it as a protest vote. And that's not what we need. We need to actually build something serious here. And having unserious people at the head of that is not how you do that. If you're a Marxist-Leninist, you should join whatever organization is active in your local area, but you should work as an ML faction to expose and displace the leadership rather than change it from within. Yeah, I mean, well, you're still changing it from within. That's not to say, like, if you're displacing it, you're changing the leadership by replacing it with yourself. So maybe semantics there, but I get what you're saying. You're trying not to just have influence, but power within the group. Point taken. I watched the whole Green Party national meeting, and none of these candidates were even involved at all, besides Cornel West, Randy Toller, and Jasmine Sherman, who's not listed for some reason. She wouldn't be listed maybe if she hasn't filed with the FEC yet. So these other people are a mystery to me. Yeah, we'll see. I'll see for a future stream and upcoming stream soon what else we can find out about them. You know, I think Randy Toller is gonna, you know, fly away like a piece of litter in the wind here. His previous experience is like running for a local school board down in Florida, I think. So, yeah, not much experience there. You know, he is, like Howie Hawkins, I think a co-founder, like very early adopter, you know, has been involved in the Green Party since the 80s. So he's definitely like a party elder in that sense. But he has no real sort of stature or standing as sort of like an established political figure. And even Jill Stein, who I don't like, had run, you know, in multiple more high-profile campaigns in Massachusetts, and could kind of handle herself as a public speaker, could present herself articulately, was very well educated. I think she was also, like West, from Harvard, right? Let me look this up for a minute. Yeah, she is an alumna of Harvard College, 1973, and Harvard Medical School, 1979. And then you got Cornel West, professor. So, anyway. Very glad I'm not in PC USA anymore. Wish I had left sooner. Yeah, I remember, you know, back when I was starting this channel like 3.5 years ago, PC USA was kind of like all the rage with like terminally online people that I was running into a lot at that stage, because I was like the only people that knew about the channel at that point, when it was still just small and getting going. And, you know, I looked at their website and I was like, this is utterly opaque. Like, there's nothing about who they are. There really weren't many position, like policy things. It was just sort of, you know, I was like, I'm not going to give these people money. I have no idea who they are. And then, you know, come to find out they're just running all over the internet with like a lot of like Nazbol shit. And yeah, so. Have I heard of Bob Avakian and RevCom, Revolutionary Communists? Saw a bunch of communist posters in my area, but never heard of the group. Yeah, it's a sort of offshoot of Maoism, and it is a cult of personality built up around Avakian. So actually, yeah, there is a book from foreignlanguages.press that is called Against Avakianism. It is quite long. It's like over 200 pages in the PDF. But yeah, there's a lot of bad things to be said about Bob Avakian. And, can't make this up, if you really, really don't value your time, there is a 4-hour conversation from maybe 2014, maybe more recently, between Bob Avakian and Cornel West. It was a like a public event held in some hall, publicized, and it's online. It's like a 4-hour thing of Cornel West talking with brother Avakian. So yeah. S4A put me on Tumblr. I like the community so far. All right, there you go. Hopefully the Africans don't get caught up in more Chinese debt traps. You know, I mean, say whatever you want about Chinese capitalism, but compared to what the US and the IMF, you know, the sort of more established older block of imperialists have been doing as far as debt traps go, I don't think what China's doing even comes close to that. Now, that may change over time as they, you know, they've been having to play, and it's not necessarily that they don't want to, but they have had to position themselves as the more benevolent counterpart to the U.S. because there's a big risk of, you know, being sort of blacklisted if you turn away from the U.S., away from the IMF, the World Bank, and you start turning toward China. There's political consequences of that. So China has had to make really good deals to these countries that have been screwed over in the developing world by the more established imperialists. Whether or not they will maintain that after they don't absolutely have to anymore remains to be seen. But yeah, I just every time I hear the Chinese debt traps thing, I'm just like, you know, remove the smote from thine own eye, or what? Remove the beam from thine own eye thing. Like, it's just really, I think the West does not have a leg to stand on talking about Chinese debt traps, which so far, again, just absolutely pale in comparison to what the U.S. and so on have done. It would be notable if China supported communist parties in Africa. Yeah, they seem to be more out to just do business. That's more what's going on. But, you know, it's like they're positioning themselves at least as trying to do fair business. And I mean, capitalism inherently is exploitative. You can't get around that. But they're like, look, we'll give you a much fairer deal than the U.S. And they do forgive a fair amount of the loans and things. And there have been relatively few cases of the sort of repo things. You know, it's played up a lot in the Western media about, you know, there was like a port in Greece and there was a port in a couple of other countries that the country wasn't able to make some of their payments, and then China took over assets instead. And then there was all this concern trolling about like, oh no, what if China starts doing surveillance, or they start trying to use that as a base for extending their political influence? And it's like, have you been asleep throughout the entire last several centuries? Because that's exactly what every colonial power has done, and they've done it much, much, much more than China has done. I mean, again, China's not been going for very long at this, so who knows where it's going to end up. But my point is just, if that's a real concern to you, you might want to look in the fucking mirror there. Just every time I hear someone in Europe or the US talk about Chinese debt traps, it's like, are you and they probably are completely ignorant of the existing debt traps coming, you know, the debt trap is coming from inside the house, really. You know, the exploitation is coming from inside the house. But yeah, they do seem more out to sort of do business and expand capital than, you know, anything approaching socialism. So yeah, I mean, they were building Israel. There was a Chinese company building Israel a subway system, for fuck's sake. You're building literally the infrastructure of an occupation. So there you go. They're trying to make money. The only good thing about China is the coming surpassing of the U.S. Anything that ruins U.S. power is a positive thing. It's the same economic system. So explain to us why that is so uniquely positive. What do you think is going to come up in its place? China is having capitalist companies go out and do, you know, mining and construction and all these other things. You don't think they're going to end up operating like the U.S.? And if not, why not? Oh, so about Japan, that was in the airport when I came back to the U.S. Right, yeah, no one was masking. People are masking in general in Japan, but it's a lot less intense than it was. I'd put masking in the US at like 1 in 1 or 200 right now, 1 in 150. How many Trotskyists in the US support the Democrats? Very few. That's one thing I will give to the Trotskyists. They will at least, vocally denounce the Democratic Party. There's actually, I mean, within DSA in particular, I think that the people often bring up within DSA that there's a stipulation that if you're a member of an organization that practices democratic centralism, then you can't join DSA. And I think that that is specifically directed at Trotskyist entryism. It's not really directed, I don't think, against like random people who like believe in Marxism and pay a nominal, membership fee to something. So Trotskyists have been known for a very long time, like a century, almost a century, as doing entryism, which is where, as a party, they try to take over another party or organization. Like they enter it, boom, en masse. 1,000 of them just entered your party, and they're the new majority. That's entryism. So why did they do this? Because in the days of the Comintern, so like the 20s and on, well, at least the 30s and on, after like Trotsky was officially out, they had nowhere to go as far as most of the communist parties. So they either could form Trotskyist parties, or they could try to like enter other parties, and they did a lot of that. But it was because they were shut out of the Comintern. Anyway, they still do it. I have seen it in practice. It's the most obnoxious thing in the fucking world. And I don't actually fault DSA for trying to protect against Trotskyist entryism. But yeah, I mean, that one strength aside, that's all I'm going to give them. This obsession about the 5% to fundraising thing is odd as hell. Yeah, so for people who don't know with the Green Party, there's a thing in U.S. politics where if your candidate passes 5% of the vote in the general election, then you qualify for federal funds and, increased recognition, and you get more established as a party. But that's not really, that's a very, in my opinion, bourgeois view of how you build a party. What you really want to do with something that ostensibly is a proletarian party, and again, I think that sort of contrarian libertarian adjacent wing, much more of a petty bourgeois side of the Green Party in general, how you would actually want to build up a proletarian party is not this thing of like, we need more money and this and that. Like, yeah, you will need money from time to time. But a lot of people approach it from this very bourgeois, petty bourgeois thing of it's all about the elections and it's all about how much money you raise, and it's all about this. No. When you build a proletarian party, like 10% of your effort is the elections. The other 90% is getting embedded in your community, becoming actually useful, involved in the struggle, having your community get to know you. That's how you build the party. But all these people, the Kyle Kalinskis and the people who just, the big brains that hang out in the Risings comment section and stuff, they think it's just all about the elections, and it's like, no, that's like 1/10 of what you should be doing as far as your overall party activity. Your party should be growing because it's a relevant part of the working class community where you live. That's how you build a party. This whole sort of top-down approach, again, very petty bourgeois and just very disconnected from the role that a party can actually and should play to get real support from the communities that it is connected with. So, like I said on the Patreon, since the 80s, we've been getting Bernie types and Jesse Jackson types, and until we're more organized, we won't get better candidates. Yeah, and like I'm saying, I think we won't get better organized till we get more class consciousness, and that's going to happen with people getting over the fear of, the big scary boss and the big scary, admittedly, police state, and getting out there and struggling. And I think you will see more people getting radicalized, ending up listening to and forming groups like we've got here at S4A. And to be clear, we're not a party, but like as a sort of, public-facing online study group where we study texts and we engage in the comments and we do the streams. You're going to see more and more stuff like this as people realize that like a much more radical and indeed revolutionary option is needed. There are just certain features of the system that are going to go on until the end of this system, which means until a revolution. You will need a revolution to actually dislodge a lot of features of this system. So, Green Socialist Organizing Project is the left line in the Green Party, it seems. Seems that way to me, too. And it is small. It's smaller than that contrarian wing. Why? Because we have so much petty bourgeois consciousness in the U.S. working class, and that's what people know and what they're attracted to and what they think success is and how they think things should be done. They're disconnected from the, sort of old left days of a really strong labor movement and a strong socialist movement and a strong international communist movement. And, they're anti-communist. Again, petty bourgeois ideology. The U.S. is a country made up primarily of proletarians who have primarily petty bourgeois ideology. So there's a big mismatch and false consciousness there. But a great correction for that false consciousness is engaging in the struggle. It can set you straight really quick. As things get more desperate, people will engage spontaneously in more and more kinds of struggle, and they will learn. Like the economic downturn that I was talking about that is most likely coming up very soon, it's going to throw a lot of people out of work. It's going to throw a lot of people out of their houses, just like happened after 2008. And then we got Occupy a few years later. Occupy was riddled with flaws. Anarchist refused to adopt a platform. Later, Bernie came along and picked up a lot of those grievances again, got them into more organized form, but then shoveled them into the Democratic Party. Well, those grievances are still there. People have many, many complaints with the system. Student debt, lack of medical care, on and on and on down the line, cost of living, and so on. And they're going to keep engaging in struggle, but it's got to happen outside the Democratic Party. And again, I see the Cornel West thing as more of a co-opting than anything. And bottom line, hey, maybe he's the, I'll throw out the possibility, maybe Cornel West is at this point actually the best that the U.S. left can do. And what I'm telling you now is it's not good enough, all right? If that's the best won't cut it, and we got to keep going. And this has been, my 2 cents as a communist. So there you go. As a communist, I'd rather see people get off the couch and at least join the Greens versus doing nothing, if that's the only option. But also as a communist, I'm not just going to be like, everything the Green Party does is great. No, there's significant elements that we're going to struggle against. Actually, this reminds me, for some reason, I think it's because I coded it wrong in my screenshots. I forgot one of the things that's new on the channel. All right, so another YouTuber, a Maoist, Black Red Guard, posted a video recently which I shared on the community tab. And it's titled, Why Would a Maoist Join DSA? It's like an hour long. And, spoiler alert, the answer is because I wanted to work and DSA was where all the work in my area was happening. And if that's the way it is right now, then you just got to deal with it. So I commented on this and I said, I've been saying it for years, but few of the terminally online keyboard warriors have wanted to hear it. Communism is not a spectator sport. Get out there and network, fire up and support struggle wherever you can, in whatever forms it's taking at this early, low-class consciousness stage in the U.S., while spreading as much agitation and education as you can through whatever local work is happening. At least a good half of DSA is very opportunist toward the Democrats, but this is something that can be argued and voted against by Marxists on the front lines within the organization when it comes up. And as the commenter was saying before, if you can get a Marxist group to actually seize power within the organization, all the better, But anyway, this is good political experience, especially for less experienced Marxists, and it can help you get more of a first-hand sense of what your local and regional left is about. Versus doing nothing at all, it can be a big step up. The same generally applies to the Green Party as well, even though both organizations have many features that we, as communists, will criticize and struggle against. Okay, and that's a fucking given. Just people try to nitpick this shit to death. And it's just like there's a better use of your time. Like, touch grass, log off, honestly. As communists, we're obviously going to criticize and struggle against various aspects of DSA and the Greens. It's a fucking given. But again, if that's where the work is happening, then go join it meet who you can, and, see where it takes you. There's literally no harm in that at this stage, given the overall composition of the U.S. Political landscape and the low level of class consciousness in the U.S. left. So maybe you should title your short piece on West, "It's Time to Move Past Jesse Jackson, American Left." That's not a bad idea. I think, though, a lot of the younger people aren't even going to know who that really, it's not going to resonate with them. I get what you're saying, but definitely it's time to move past Bernie Sanders for sure. Like that, people know who Bernie Sanders is. And I've been saying that since the beginning. Yes, we need to move past Bernie Sanders, absolutely. But yeah, you're right that they're in kind of a they're in kind of the same mold. DSA is better than CPUSA. Mostly CPUSA is far from the Alabama sharecropper union base it used to be, but intense struggle will give us a party we need. Yeah. A lot of the Mensheviks that switched over to the Bolsheviks ended up being more revisionist or opportunist later on. Yeah, that's not terribly surprising. I mean, as we're talking about Trotsky, for example. Like, Trotsky was Trotsky. He had a long established record of being Trotsky for like 20 years. And Lenin was writing about it in that 1914 piece, Disruption of Unity. I can't really say it better than he was saying, but yeah. Environmentalism is really a unifying issue. In a sense, it draws in a bunch of different struggles. Environmental racism, public health. Well, it is the environment, after all. I mean, if we're taking a sort of holistic or global approach to like what's going on, that is, environmental or a systems approach for sure. Anyway, public health, jobs guarantee, transportation and infrastructure deal. The Green New Deal was a big draw for me into the Bernie campaign, and the Greens platform made Bernie's look like a joke, honestly. Yeah, I mean, Bernie's platform was like, take the Green Party platform, the Howie Hawkins platform, then water it down 20 or 25%, then you've got the Bernie platform. That's like, yeah, if you liked Bernie, you would love the Greens, because it was everything Bernie was and more. That's why it was such a betrayal. You have maybe one or two chances per century to be in the kind of position Bernie was in, so popular, actually had the credentials to be president in the sense that he had been in Congress for over 2 decades. Like, this wasn't some protest vote. This guy was actually like, a congressman, a senator. He could have been president, actually. And he was rallying people around a very progressive message, embracing the popular reforms that, Occupy had been talking about, and et cetera. And he then, rather than saying, okay, I'm bowing out of the... I was tempted to do my Bernie voice, but instead of saying, okay, we got screwed, and this is back in 2016, we got screwed, and, okay, Hillary, quote, won, whatever. Now I'm going to go join the Green Party. And I encourage all the people that have been following me to do the same. And, we might not do anything this election, but we'll be there in the midterms, and we'll be there in 2020, and we're going to build a party that the Democratic Party obviously doesn't want to be. So like what I just said, this is no-brainer for what should have happened, and you just don't get that many opportunities ever. They're very rare. And he pissed it away at a pivotal time in U.S. history when it was an inter-crisis period between 2008 and, 2024, whenever the next crash is going to be. Took a pivotal time when we could have fortified for something better and started building something, and he just absolutely refused to do it and is still trying to pretend that this was like somehow not a betrayal and a good move. Anyway, it would necessarily take on, continuing the environmentalism, it would necessarily take on capitalism, which stands to exploit by destroying nature and our clean air, water, and soil, as per the green capitalism comments. The big bourgeoisie will try to stop you, which will teach you good class consciousness. Yeah, you'll see who's on what side. Absolutely. Found some similar posters in my area from socialistrevolution.org. Is that a Trotskyist group? I don't know off the top of my head. Oh, they're with IMT. Yeah, those are Trotskyists. I would really, unless you're totally desperate, stay far away from Trotskyists. Midwestern Marx, or someone was calling Midwit Marx, yet again, another YouTuber, proving itself. Oh, it's a YouTuber. There's the one guy Eddie that tends to like have the worst, very loud public opinions. But it is a couple of people behind that channel proving themselves as patsock opportunists towards Oliver Anthony, the guy that had the like anti-welfare song. Midwestern Marx is whack. Didn't they recently admit it was an impersonator the whole time emailing them? Oh, they thought they were going to interview that guy that did the like anti-welfare song, and then it was just somebody like jerking their chain. That's funny. They really are a circus show. That's funny. I mean, good for they deserve it. Like, good. I'm glad that they got like punked. You know, Ashton Kutcher jumped out. That's so ridiculous. Like, they're not even good at being like reactionary sellouts. What is the long-term goal of entryism? Just coming out and merging the party they took over with their main org? No, it's just having a home. You know, they're like just parasites. It was like they had trouble setting up their thing. They wanted to get, you know, in where the masses were. So what better way to become popular with the masses than like stage a hostile takeover? And the logic is stunning. I mean, and it comes off as very abrupt, hostile, and unfriendly. As an ex-Trot, it's been frustrating to see both Trots and MLs still argue as if the USSR exists still. No, I think that's mainly Trots that do that. So literally, the fact that you are a Trotskyist is you are hanging on to something. Like Marxism-Leninism extends way beyond Stalin. Trotskyism does not extend beyond Trotsky. By being a Trotskyist, it is you who is holding on to the past. Okay, that's my perspective. I've never met a non-Trot or ML who cares about their beef. Yeah, MLs care about it because Trotskyism was riddled with errors, and there's like a solid theoretical basis for opposing those errors which are identified with Trotskyism. Marxism-Leninism did move on from Trotskyism. Trotskyism has not moved on. It didn't have a future beyond Trotsky. All right? So it's Trotskyists who are stuck in the past. Like, if Trotskyist ceased to be a thing, people would stop talking about Trotsky, except to just compare when errors came up. Like, no, this is the same thing that Trotsky did. Found S4A on Spotify now that Stitcher is dead. I don't even know what Stitcher is. Yep, the Spotify address is actually right on the screen there. But yeah, I actually moved over. There's a lot of administrative work associated with running the site too. I recently moved over like 40 of the older audiobooks from the YouTube onto Spotify. Not everything is on the SoundCloud, I think. Not everything is on the Spotify yet. It's just tedious, like moving it over. So anyway, but there is more stuff on the Spotify than ever before. I moved a bunch of like several dozen things over earlier this week or last week, I forget. Recently. Currently listening to The Bourgeois Intelligentsia's Struggle Against Workers by Lenin, another good one. Yeah, I actually started making a playlist called S4A's Picks. I'm going to put it in the recommended reading section. It's just, there's a lot of stuff on it. There's like 100 things on it so far. I'm not done adding things to it yet. But it's just sort of like, it's a combination of important things that people probably have heard of, but maybe they never read them, and stuff that I just like that you maybe haven't heard of unless I point it out to you. And so I put it into the sort of best of, you know, what's my recommended reading list? Like there's 100 things in it so far, and there'll probably be 150. But that's like a sixth of the channel that I just feel like should be highlighted, you know. It's also stuff that I kind of put in there for variety because like people know, obviously I've uploaded a lot of Lenin. Lenin is like a good percentage of the audiobooks that I've done. But, you know, I've done one or two from Amilcar Cabral. You know, there's some Nkrumah on there. There's like this and that, but you maybe missed it if you weren't following 2 years ago kind of thing. So that's another purpose of the S4A's picks, is to kind of like highlight the forgotten ones that I think shouldn't be forgotten. I used to be a patron over on Patreon. I had to cancel my subscription because I'm going to be having a child. Congratulations, and have to pinch pennies. Just want to say I really appreciate all the work, and I love to listen while I am at work delivering mail. Thanks for all you do. Well, thank you for your support, and it's appreciated. People, you know, do drop in and drop out of the Patreon. Mostly, I mean, I look at the exit surveys on Patreon, and it's almost always either nothing or my finances changed. Like, rarely there will be some, like, ideological agreement that somebody stopped being a patron over. Like, for example, I lost a patron over, I think the exact comment was, his views on religion are, like, too harsh and not nuanced. Yeah, well, I'm a Marxist-Leninist, so, you know, like, I'm not trying to get out there and be in people's faces and be douchey about it, but when we're having a conversation among Marxist-Leninists, yeah, I fucking hate religion. I think it's completely a reactionary, backward force on the planet. I would love to see it gone as fast as possible. And that's my opinion. So, you know, if that's not nuanced for you, sorry. Like, I don't know if you forgot you were supporting a Marxist-Leninist, but maybe that isn't for you. Anyway. Glad I got out of PC USA before they got into completely warped shit. Yeah, they're not on a good track. Socialist revolution is infesting my campus. Socialist revolution and the IMT, International Marxist Tendency? I forget what IMT stands for. They've had like 3 sex scandals. Their leader just got ousted for assault. Yeah, this was like, there was another group, the ISO, International Socialist Organization, hideously obnoxious Trotskyist organization. And I think they disbanded in 2018 over like a sex scandal that got handled badly. So literally the worst people in the socialist movement. Sexual harassment is rampant. Talking about IMT or Socialist Revolution. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really had contact with them just because of the Trotskyism thing alone. But yeah, you hear these things from time to time. Speaking about environmentalism and eco-socialism, I recently read Kohei Saito's Marx in the Anthropocene. Very interesting read. Highly recommend. Thank you. Maybe I will check that out. Is there any point in trying to combat COVID minimizing propaganda? Saw some good pre-made posters in line. Was thinking about making a weekend out of putting them up. I mean, you can try. I don't think there'd be any harm to it. I don't know how. I'm sure it would be effective because, you know, I think there's a lot of people walking around uneasily, going like, wait a minute, where did the virus go? I just got sick. My family member just got sick. This thing isn't over. I think it would be very validating for people to see in real life that. So yeah, I think there would be a point. There would definitely be no harm, and I think that there would be a point. So yeah, and at least having these conversations with, you know, family and friends, definitely. Everyone should check out Prolocult's new documentary. You can find a link to their channel from the channels tab at S4A. Prolekult. Their new documentary, Marx and Nature, part of their Approaching Marxism series. Okay, I haven't seen that one yet. I have like very, very limited time too. I spent some time the other day going through tabs and like watching stuff, and I found a very good stream of communists in Ukraine and Russia that are not part of like KPRF or CPU, KPU, that are against the war, but they're in more underground organizations. I'll share that on the community tab. But yeah, there's good stuff out there. It's just like trying to find the time for it all. The slogan that you get what you're organized to take should be tattooed into our heads. That is very important, yeah. I don't want pie in the sky when I die. I want prosperity on earth. Yeah, well, there's an old IWW song. Because so back in the day, the IWW was organizing migrants, like a lot of mine workers, people who would like ride the rails, hobos and bums. Like there was a song, Hallelujah, I'm a Bum. They like definitely inserted themselves into like bum culture and like migrant worker culture. Out in the real early days, you know, early 1900s, they got really involved in that, and they were up against the Salvation Army in a lot of places, which they called the Starvation Army. And so that song by Joe Hill, You'll Get Pie in the Sky When You Die, That's a Lie. That was a direct attack on the Starvation Army, because their whole thing was like, you know, oh, be good and like you'll be rewarded in the afterlife. And, or as they summarized it, you want pie now? No, you'll get pie in the sky when you die. Well, as the IWW said, that's a lie. Just wanted to tell people, if you're looking to read the Marx-Engels collected works missing from Marxists.org, they can find it on the Pirate Bay. Been getting to know young Marx all day. Yeah, Marx wrote poetry real early. He was dissecting Hegel, Kant, building his theory since he was 16. His letter to his dad is really heartwarming. Fuck Lawrence and Wizart for making MIA take it down. You can actually even just go to the Internet Archive also, web.archive.org. If there is a page on MIA that comes up as like copyrighted and missing, you can often find it on the Wayback Machine. All right, so we're caught up with the chat, and I've got about a half an hour or so left. And let's get into some of the prepared content for today. So anyway, some thoughts there. And like I said, look for a separate video in which I go through more of these articles in detail off stream. All right, so let's close out today with the chat. Oh, and before we do, let me thank the patrons, which I haven't updated for September yet because Patreon is kind of weird about updating people's status, so I can't always accurately tell. So that is from late August. But anyway, thanks to the patrons, patreon.com/socialismforall, and you can get your name on the screen as well. Greatly appreciate that support. Speaking of finances, allows me to spend more time doing this channel than I would be able to do otherwise. And I am getting back into a place where we're going to, I think, do a weekly stream. I might even do 2 this week. But taking Twitter out of the equation, I think, is going to make it a lot less stressful. So thanks, patrons. And engagement counts as well. So even if you're not a patron, like, share, subscribe, comment. That helps to boost the channel and the YouTube algorithm. All right. So let's now close out with some chat. So continuing a bit before, religion is a thorn in our side. Another comment, religion is helping keep my fellow homeless in our chains. I sometimes go to Orthodox churches, but just for the atmosphere. Breathe in that incense. As soon as I open the Bible, I start to feel sick. There you go. The IWW needs to make a comeback with a Marxist-Leninist bent. Industrial unionism was set to bear out craft unionism if it weren't for Taft-Hartley. Yeah, Taft-Hartley actually outlawed some of the practices of industrial unionism effectively. So we need to repeal Taft-Hartley, which Bernie Sanders was talking about repealing parts of Taft-Hartley. Might just want to do the whole thing. But yeah, that's a major, the Taft-Hartley legislation, a major obstacle in the post-war class struggle as far as union rights go. Oh yeah, if you're looking for other rare pieces of theory as well, or things that might not be on MIA, Marx 2 Mao, the number 2, is another website that hosts things like that. And how can workers protect themselves from a 2008 Part 2? Unionize now? I mean, start making political formations. I think, unfortunately, what's going to happen is people have gotten way too complacent, and they just sort of bought in to this idea that, oh, we're safe now. And there's not going to be another big crash again. And people have just let it slide. They haven't viewed 2008 like the emergency that it was, that this system is becoming catastrophically unstable. And yeah, they're not getting prepared. So I don't know. I think it's going to take another hard knock on people's asses, and I hope that this time again the left can do coherent, consistent messaging outside the Democratic Party to actually, have us standing on our feet, making demands in our interest. But I mean, it's coming. And I think in the kind of time frame that I think that it's coming in, people are not going to get organized. Because, I mean, if they haven't by now, they're not going to in the next 2 years, I think is a safe guess to make. But as far as like what, people can do, I mean, keep doing what you're doing now as if you're getting organized and stuff, and just expect this to be a really painful event. And expect that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be thrown out of work and thrown out of their houses and just put into precarious situations. I mean, student Loan payments are starting up again. That affects a really significant amount of people. That's a financial pressure that alone is going to be, do I eat this month kind of decision for a lot of people. We need to start the messaging now that 2008 never really went away. They just sort of, they hid it behind their backs for a while, but it's back. And it never really fully went away. That would be probably most of my messaging. I really appreciate the uploads on the homeless industrial complex. I'm in a stage of just talking to people in the shelter, but even if I don't organize on the ground when it happens, I still hope my time caring and helping was worth it. I believe we will organize and win. Yes, I mean, there's a lot that can happen, and I look forward also to doing more from the Homeless Industrial Complex playlist, which if you go into any of those videos, you can download the whole syllabus. It's uploaded onto Google Drive, and there's a link. You can download everything from the people who put it together. I didn't put it together. I'm just making audiobooks of it. So that's my contribution. But yeah, there's many, many examples in there of, the National Union of the Homeless, of different encampments getting organized. And yeah, it can make life significantly more bearable and restore some of your faith in humanity. So, because it gets pretty lonely down there. I think I see if I can print out basic organizing pamphlets and share them. Yeah, that's totally a good thing to do. I think I might actually stream tomorrow. I'll announce that ASAP and continue. Okay, that's the US, and that's sort of things that are closely connected to and tangential to the US. What about the rest of the world? Look at some of the Russia situation, bit of the BRICS and China situation as well. So we'll get into that also. Maybe I'll do that in the offline video, or maybe it'll be a stream. All right, well, so we are going to end the stream here. Thanks to everyone in the stream for coming and for your contributions. Hang in there. I see K Communism 35 that you're being called names sometimes when organized. Hang in there. I mean, people in your situation can get pretty stressed, and I think when they see what you're actually trying to do, they'll probably come around, but hang in there. I mean, it's demoralizing, and that tends to spread in that situation. But anyway, yeah, thanks to everybody for helping make this stream what it is, and we will do another one soon.